It's reasonable if someone doesn't like something about you. First of all, of course, not to get upset about it. They might be wrong or right to not like you, or to not like some particular feature about you. Presumably they're right to let you know, so that you could consider correcting it if it is wrong. But of course it may not be wrong, it may just be a whole variety of reasons as to why they don't like some feature of your character or your ways. I mean, the world avoids people that it doesn't like. But the godly only avoid people that don't like them, where it's reasonable and where it's feasible. We avoid people that really don't like something about us. We don't avoid people that we don't like because, well, they may have some features that we don't really like, but we still wish to love and bless and help them. So we don't automatically avoid them. I mean, it may be that there's some feature about them that's so destructive we have to avoid them. May well be that. But it's not that we don't like them. On the contrary, we love and care for all life. We do tend to avoid people that don't like us. That's reasonable, that takes the pressure off them without us having to change. But we also examine ourselves, just in case we could improve things, change our ways in a way acceptable to us as we understand it between us and God. So, the world automatically avoids people it doesn't like, or people that do things that they don't like. We do not. We don't avoid anyone except where certain characteristics or ways of the other person are harmful enough to avoid them for the better. For the better for both of us. So you might be putting up with some very harmful ways, and yes, you might be putting up with some very harmful ways, because you not only love the person, but you see that you're beneficial to them, and you wish to benefit them, and that gain, if it's greater than the cost to you, say personally, from a narrow point of view, then, well, you don't avoid such people. You, on the contrary, continue to fellowship with them and help them and bless them, in as far as you can. So I put up with all sorts of antisocial behaviour from my children, because I feel that I'm blessing them by staying around, caring for them, looking after them, and that's lovely, it's worth it to me. Could they be so difficult and bad that I'd rather they kept away from me or I kept away from them? They could be like that, really troublesome, really destructive. And, well, I might hope that they move away from me rather than me from them, which I suspect they would in the end, because if you're so different to other people, they do move away from you. So, you may well then not have to move away from people who are difficult with you. They may well move away from you first. And, well, I guess my last wife did that. She was becoming physically too dangerous to be with. And she had a protection order issued against her in my favour to protect me and child. And she decided not to come back. Okay. Since God has allowed it, I would say it was for the best. And in some ways I can see how it was for the best, certainly as regards my personal safety, not my daughter's. I mean, I never thought she'd be dangerous to my daughter. Sorry, our daughter. Let's get things right. The universe, this world, is well arranged so that you can avoid certain people if that really is for the best. But that doesn't mean we don't love them. I still love my now ex-wife, and am helpful in all the ways that I reasonably can be. And she continues to want to be separate. And well, it's been a blessing. It's not what I wanted, it's not what I asked for, but it's been a blessing. But I can see that had she not have gone of her own accord, I might have had to do something about it, because I was concerned for my safety. One doesn't want to be killed in the night or poisoned, you know. And I really did think it was going that way. And I've seen that with my mum and dad. I mean, if it had been legal, Mum would have killed Dad long ago, you know, long before he died. And yeah. So, we have to be rational and reasonable, but we choose to be loving and kind as well. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Now, I think I got to doing this recording because I was reviewing in my mind Denise, the bit of a sermon that I'd recorded, and you can see this a few recordings back. And the first part of that actual recording, which is halfway through her talk, but was on "We die to self." It's very much a Pauline sort of understanding of things. She dies to self to obey her husband, and he dies to self to provide for her. Well, let me say, I'm come that you might have life and have it more abundantly, not that you go around annihilating yourself. On the contrary, I've come to bless you by finding a way to make your individuality more lovely by being harmonious with other people's individuality. That this is the practice. Now you can take surrendering certain parts of yourself because you feel it's a blessing to others. But I think I'm following Rosenberg here, that you're likely to bear a grudge. You're likely to expect some return, some gain, them being godly in return perhaps, or whatever. And when that's not forthcoming, you're likely to say something like, well, this is not a godly outcome. I'm going to have to do something about this. Whereas, in the Rosenberg understanding of things, you should only do that which you are delighted to do. So, I helped this old lady across the road perhaps because the sheer pleasure of knowing I've been a benefit to her, I've been a blessing. And because doing that gives me joy. Why does it give me joy? I don't know, it fulfills something in me that just wants to help. Loves the response in general. You help someone, they respond well. If they responded badly, which is unlikely unless somehow they felt that what you thought was a help, they found a great hindrance, then I might not get so much pleasure. And indeed, if I really thought they find it a hindrance, it would be odd to nonetheless help.
Traffic light turns green.
Rosenberg gives the case of the ducks that want feeding, and presumably, and the little boy who just loves feeding them. He delights in seeing them all fluffing around and the activity. He's doing it because it's a joy. It's a joy to do. The little girl might help a creature because the creature seems to need help, and she delights in helping. We live in a world of reciprocity, trade. I'll give you $10 if you give me this item. And you're happy to do that. You know, we believe in free trade in that sense. There's a freedom. The individual can choose to do it or not. If he chooses to do it, it's because there's a gain to him in doing it. And both the buyer and the seller. If they're entering freely into it, they're doing it because, in some sense, they're maximizing their utility or their benefit. And so they're both better off by the trade. They're both happier. They're both delighted to do it. I might want to do something for you, but you can't afford it. You might still do it. Just because it's a joy to know that I'm helping. And you find it a joy to receive it, presumably. If you don't find it a joy to receive it, then of course, well, it's probably not wise to force this benefit upon you, I'm not sure. I don't die to self in the marital relationship. I agree if you do and you're both doing it, the marriage can do nothing but work, except that you're both dead, of course. You've formed something that's compatible with an ongoing relationship, but the relationship itself has destroyed both of you, which was not what you found lovely about each other to begin with. Or did you only marry each other on condition that the other would die towards you? I don't think so. I mean, unless I've got her completely wrong, she didn't mean that at all. Let's think what else she could mean. I think she meant she surrendered her decision-making by deferring to his. Now, she may have felt that there was an absolute joy in doing this. In fact, a great relief. He makes the decisions. He may make them differently to me and may make some of them right and some of them wrong. But I'm just happy to surrender it. And he dies to self, in her view, in that he, I don't know, focuses his love and care and attention on her. Faithfulness, come what may. He's surrendering some freedom that he otherwise enjoyed. I don't think so. I never felt that what I was giving up was some great burden. I did recognize that to get the full benefit out of this relationship, I'm going to love and care for her. Not at the cost of myself, but as a great blessing to myself. I wasn't destroying myself, I was allowing myself to enter a relationship that was so enriching. It enabled me to become more of what I valued. And I trusted I was enabling her to become more of what she valued. Certainly not to die to anything. Unless, of course, she wanted to give up certain things because she was only doing it of necessity and now she needn't. And that might be like work. She needn't work any longer and might have enough income to look after her anyway, and it's a joy to do that. It's just so lovely to know that I'm fulfilling what she wants. That's not a death to self. That's you could say it's a loss of the old difficulties, and now I'm appreciated and valued and loved and always got lovely company. What are we talking about, death? I'm come that you might have life. And my joy is that you have it more abundantly, not that you kill anything that's lovely and valuable and you. Well, I'm happy to remove all your difficulties. If that's a death, well, it's a very wonderful death then. I don't think death is appropriate. And now to continue Denise's drift though, not drift, probably absolute passionate intent, is to say marriage must be put before everything. And she cites the case of the chap who's got a fantastic ministry, but it's not going to be worth anything if his marriage collapses. And in that particular culture he's in, it's questionable whether he could continue again in ministry if he... I think she meant has another divorce, that somehow he had gone through a divorce, but still been accepted as in his ministry. Well, there's a slight confusion here. There it's a cultural thing that's demanded of him. I'm not preoccupied with the cultural arguments. I'm preoccupied with what does God take to be right. The culture could be wrong. I'm not coming from the point of view of the culture's right and therefore we must do that. Of course, the culture may put some constraint on us that gives different outcomes if we have different sorts of behaviour. And we're going to have to take the consequences of that into account, of course. But does God, does God, for instance, feel you can't have a ministry because your marriage has failed? No way. Certainly not. If that's what she meant, that's just not true. Not acceptable, not right, not valid. Your marriage may have collapsed for reasons utterly beyond your control, as I feel fairly confident that was so for me. I wouldn't say absolutely certain. I don't hold anything certainly, but pretty sure I was very upset to lose any wife. Certainly not initiating it. But there are circumstances in which you might have to do it yourself. You might have an abusive relationship, which I had with certainly the third wife. And if you like, the police protected me from it, thank goodness. Well, God protected me, didn't he? Thank you, Lord. In passing, you can't do much about a wife that's violent towards you. You can't even contain the violence in case you get accused of being violent, because the man is, you're guilty until proved innocent. It's a certain cultural problem in that regard. The world sees men as potentially violent and women as potentially suffering from violence from the man, which increasingly, of course, in this century has not been the case, but hasn't necessarily caught up with, the understanding of what's just and not just hasn't quite caught up. Okay, so quite simply, weddings are not funerals. There's nobody dying. We're not dying to self. Self is blossoming and becoming what it's longed to be in a fairy tale partnership, perhaps. One's perhaps more hopeful than transpires quite often. And even so, you might hold that, well, it's not what I thought, but it's still worth far more than it being dissolved. And you may, on the other hand, come to the opposite conclusion, in which case you will act accordingly. And certainly it complicates it when children are involved, because you now have to take the welfare not just of each of you into account, but the children as well. And what's wrong with divorce is where it's entered into without true love and care of each other, each person affected by the dissolution. You may feel that it's paramount that the couple stay together from the point of view of the benefit of the children, but on the other hand you might not, and obvious cases are where there's violence going on, or addiction and so forth. Yes. I'll pause there. This is long enough. Thank you, Heavenly Father.